So I have my second error of the year. I shot a lot of this podcast in slow motion on the main camera. So basically, if you're watching this on YouTube, stick with me. It's gonna be a lot on Daniel,
Which isn't that bad, right?
Yeah, it's better than looking at me, I guess. And then once we get about an hour on the podcast, it will shift back to hopefully back to both camera angles. But most people listen anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, I listen.
Yeah, but so just enjoy Danny's face.
A lot of ugly guests, so I just listen.
Oh, who are you calling out? Who?
I'm kidding.
Who do you think let's hear it. Who's been the ugliest guy on the podcast?
No, come on. Don't
You're
be
too
on the
nice.
spot like this.
All right, so I apologize for that, but you'll see a lot of Daniel, and like I said, we'll go back to the two camera angles in about an hour into the podcast. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Against All Odds podcast. I'm here with my little brother, Daniel Espeleta. You actually kind of look like my little brother, which is funny. Yeah.
Come on, man. No.
You do. I swear you look like my brother. Just my brother's 6'4". So if you just took him and just shrunk him down, you look like him.
Basically.
Yeah, but we're here with Danny. Danny, welcome to the podcast. What I'd like to do is to do some rapid fire questions just off my dome, and then kind of relax, get into it, and then we'll start with your story. So does that sound good?
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. I'm pumped. Okay, Danny, full name.
Daniel Francisco Espeleta Quiroz.
Bro, there's something about these Latin American names that just, they get me. I like it. You and Carlos. Carlos had a fantastic you should have heard him just rattle off his name.
Yeah, we use our last name from our dad and our mom, so
it makes
I like to throw that in there.
Yeah, that makes more sense to me to do that, because then your mom's maiden name's just kind of lost.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then if I had my mom's maiden name, then I'd have a little bit of Mexican flair to it. Instead of Matthew Robert Sheldon, it would be Matthew Robert Canchola
from
Sheldon.
Monterrey. From Monterrey.
Exactly. Age?
26.
26. You just turned 26, right?
Just a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Favorite EPL team?
Actually, I'm gonna go Arsenal. I've never actually supported a team full on in the EPL, but I think I would have to say Arsenal.
Mm-hmm. Favorite team overall, anywhere?
Barcelona for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up watching the Pep years with Barca, and then kind of that was imprinted on me for the rest of my life.
Favorite player?
Iniesta.
Yeah. Favorite food?
I would say ceviche. Yeah, that has to be right up there for me.
Mm-hmm. Ceviche is amazing. I didn't have ceviche for the first time until I was like 19.
Really?
And I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. And tres leches, I think you had a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
For my
birthday.
birthday.
For your birthday, that was good. Let's do favorite movie. Best movie experience you've seen in the theaters.
In theaters?
Yeah. It could be a comedy where you laughed really hard, or just like an action movie that you just really enjoyed, whatever.
In theaters, I haven't really seen too many. I just saw Dune 2 in theaters, and that was pretty good.
Bro, I want to see that one really bad.
Yeah, it was
Mimi
really good.
hates the Dune series. I read all the books.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I really liked them. They got weird at the end. But have you read any of the books?
I've read the first one. Yeah.
It's hard to get into that, huh?
It is.
Bro,
first, yeah.
You start reading, and it starts talking like you should already know all the terminology, all the words,
vocabulary. True.
I had to reread the first 50 pages because I'm like, am I missing something? I don't understand. But then it's good though.
For sure. And then if it's not theater, one of my favorites also is Pursuit of Happiness with
a good movie.
Will Smith.
Yeah, really good movie. That one made me tear up at the end. Did you cry?
Yeah, that movie got me emotional for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do a player that you like to watch right now that you like to emulate your game off of and learn from.
I'm gonna have to go with Bernardo Silva for me. Just
I like
has a similar,
yeah, I can see that.
Similar position, similar role, and similar body type. He's, I think, one of the most technically sound players that I see in the modern game. Him and Phil Foden for me are just kind of top.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I really like that. I can see that. I think you're bigger than Bernardo Silva though.
Slightly.
Slightly? How tall is he?
Yeah,
Do you know?
no. I think I'm a little bit.
He's got to be like
yeah,
5'6".
A little bit taller, for sure.
You're stronger too.
Yeah, maybe a little thicker. Yeah.
You think you're more technical though?
No. No. Hopefully I can get there.
Okay, I like it. Let's do one more question. This is one of my favorite questions. Ideal off day. You have whatever, do whatever on your one off day. How are you spending it?
For me, it'd have to be back in Costa Rica, just going to the beach, playing soccer, tennis, kind of jumping in the ocean. Just very relaxed day for me.
Yeah, so you're still touching the ball,
for sure.
doing some training.
Yeah.
This guy,
no off days, man.
You don't take any off days ever. It's crazy. We'll have 2 days off. You'll come in on Sunday, get your own workout in, go for like 8-minute interval runs on the treadmill, and then we'll have the optional training. You're there.
Gotta get the work done, man.
I like it. I like it. And honestly, I mean, it's a good way to approach it.
Yeah, anytime I'm able to train, I think there's always like little things you can do, even if you're too tired. Just kind of getting touches on the ball, working on the technical side of things is always a little bonus.
Yeah. And I mean, even if you do like 20-30 minutes, you still feel sharp. It's crazy how much sharper you can feel just doing a little bit extra like that.
For sure. And I think that's kind of how it was brought up, really, and kind of always making the most of little time frames where I'm with the ball, kind of playing against the wall. It's crazy how much playing against the wall can help. I've seen some of the best players preach that as well, like Zidane, Berbatov, I think.
Matt Sheldon, I preach it. I preach it in my videos.
Yeah,
it is true. It's true. It's crazy.
And even if you have like a double wall or like a corner wall where you're like passing one way and then turning.
Have you seen my videos?
I've seen some of them.
Bro,
but
that's right.
Is that right on?
I found
right
this
up your
place.
alley?
I found this place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, during COVID. I don't know. I was looking for places to train, and all the fields were locked down and gated up. They would take the goals away, and like you'd go on the field, no one around you for 200 feet, and police officers would come. Hey, you can't be here.
Yeah,
it's closed down because of COVID.
Yeah, I hated those
I'm the only
times.
one here, 200 feet. But so I had to try to find places to train, and I found this one park. It was like an elementary school, and it was like a place to grill, and for some reason there was like a 3-foot high cement wall on 3 sides, and it was open at the back, and so it was a flat concrete slab with the 3 walls.
Yeah.
And, I would go bink, 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 left, center, right.
I think
left,
I've seen
center.
those. I've seen those for sure.
Oh my God. It was, I was like, I found this is like the Mecca. This is the best training spot ever.
Yeah.
And if I ever build a training facility, I'm having one of those things because it was amazing.
For sure. Yeah. Have you seen the Dortmund machine? Where
Yes.
It's like I think that's just higher level, but it's like similar.
Yeah.
For sure.
The football knot. I think that's what it's called. Football knot. That's really cool. That's the dream. That's what you got to do. All right. Awesome. So you finished the rapid fire questions. You feeling loose?
For sure. Yeah.
All right. Good. All right. So where were you born?
I was born in Athens, Georgia. Lived there till I was 4 years old. And haven't been back. Actually, my parents and my sister went back just a little bit ago, but I wasn't able.
Yeah.
And then after living in Georgia for around 4 years, I spoke Spanish with my parents at home, and then picked up English from just going to daycare. And then we moved to Costa Rica. Lived there till I was around 7-8 years old. My dad actually worked in an ecological reserve in Costa Rica, so I kind of got to grow up in the rainforest a little bit. We'd go on walks as a family, just kind of see the wildlife, and kind of also played with the locals. As a kid, I would be playing maybe with guys that were 10 years older sometimes, and I just got thrown in there.
Just pick up games.
My dad would also jump in, but from a young age, I kind of was playing with older guys, older people for sure.
And both your parents are Costa Rican, right?
Yeah, they're both Costa Rican.
Okay,
but
and they were both born there?
They were both born in Costa Rica, but they decided to come and study in the U.S. They actually went to the University of Georgia, and they had me when they were there.
And I know we'll get into it, but for those of you that are listening, Daniel is the smartest person I've ever talked to.
Come on, man. You haven't talked to my dad then.
Your dad's smarter than you think?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because he's a professor, right?
He is. He's a professor, worked in plant physiology, or that's his background. And yeah, he went to the University of Georgia. Then he got a PhD there.
Yeah.
Kind of bounced around different universities as well. And we'll get into it a little bit, but moved a lot with my family.
And like your dad also played.
He did.
And I already know a lot of your story because I had to basically sign on my house when I was closing here in Detroit. You had to do a physical. So we kind of missed the team bus to go down for a preseason trip to Indianapolis. And so then I drove us down in a rental car all the way down to Indy, and it was like 4-hour trip. And I just picked your brain and
we talked the whole time.
Yeah, talked literally the whole time, all 4 hours.
Yeah,
it's
went through little towns. Yeah, Atlanta, Indiana.
Thought I was gonna be lost. I thought there's no way that there's gonna be. This is where we're supposed to be, but we got there. So I know a lot of this already. But yeah, your dad played at a pretty high level.
He did. So I think he could have pursued it a little bit more. But just the things, how things were at the time. He wanted, so he met my mom and he wanted to settle down a little bit and kind of give her a little more security at that point. So that's when he made the switch to come and study here in the US. But he did play back home in second division, and was pretty competitive. I think his main attributes were defending and kind of, being very like he'd be able to last a long time. He'd just be an endurance type of player for sure.
That's cool. What position did he play?
He played kind of everywhere, but mostly as a center defensive mid and outside back.
The positions.
Yeah. Tough positions too.
Yeah. That's you got the extremes of the fitness of like box to box, just constant running, and then the high speed running, relax, interval stuff.
Exactly.
Like that.
And that's what he was the best at, just kind of that box to box role.
Okay. And then so did he, from like early on, did he push you to play soccer? Did he want you to be a pro? Was he like training you? How did that look?
I think it just came naturally. He would play in Georgia growing up. Even when I was around 3-4 years old, he'd take me with him, and I would be outside with my mom, and he'd be playing. And then after playing, he'd come to me, and we'd kind of kick a little ball around. And
when you said playing, is he playing like a amateur, like Sunday league type thing, men's league?
At that point, UGA never had a varsity team, but he was just playing with like their club team.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Does he speak English when he came over?
He had a decent school. Actually, my mom was way more fluent than my dad, just because the school that she went to was more bilingual than the one that my dad went to, but he learned pretty quick. He had to pick it up pretty fast coming over here.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I mean, yo hablo español. If you want, we could switch. Just let me know.
I know that's not true, by the way.
See? Ask me a question in Spanish.
¿Cómo estuvo tu día, Matt?
Mi última día?
How was your day?
Muy bien. Yo gano en el fútbol. Sí.
Ganaste en soccer tennis? No, you didn't play soccer tennis.
Yeah, I did. And I won. Me and Maxie beat Dom and Murph.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
So actually you won today.
2 games to 3, yeah.
Must be the first time this week.
It hasn't been a great week. I try out because Maxie, man, I don't want to blame my partner. I'm not going to talk any crap about Maxie, but he goes for it. He's the same type of player he is on the big field.
He takes risks. Big risks.
Sometimes the big risk when it's tied, you got to play simple. I said, Maxie, just get it over the net. He's going for the corners. But that's what that's what makes him great at the same time. You can't hold those guys back. You can't rein them back. But yeah, we won today. It was great. Where were you?
I was actually doing treatment today. But yeah, just maybe must be because I train so much.
Yeah, I know. You don't take any off days. I'm trying to get you to take at least one off day a week. I think it's smart.
We'll take an off day together
Okay.
when we win.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. What are we going to do? See a movie?
I don't know. It's up to you.
Go play some soccer, tennis, and run on the treadmill?
It's up to
for
you.
your ideal off day? I don't know, because your ideal off day still sounds like a lot of work.
No, but I meant go to the beach, and
Yeah.
that's different.
Okay, we'll go to the lake here.
Yeah.
Okay, I like it. So then when did you start playing for a club team? Was it in Georgia, or did you transition to Costa Rica at this time?
For a club team, well, I was way too young in Georgia. I would say the first kind of team I was on was with my cousins, and they were a little bit older. I was around six years old. They were around 8, from anywhere from 8 to 10. But that was kind of my first formal team. On the weekends. That's how it began. But of course, I would be playing like throughout the week. Just Costa Rica, it's a big soccer culture for sure. So it's easy finding people to play with. Maybe nowadays it's kind of shifted a little bit, where it's a little tougher for like younger guys to find people to play with. I think it's interesting, but there's been a big shift because a lot of games are televised now from like the Prem and different big leagues around the world, that I think now a lot more people watch soccer, but not as many people play it, at least back home. There's kind of been, and they kind of discredit a little bit of the national soccer over the international soccer. They prefer to watch kind of Champions League and that.
Yeah. That's so, even though it's almost gotten more popular because you can watch more, you think that the reason there's so much to watch that less people just are outside just playing all the time?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a big part of it. And also, I mean, obviously technology nowadays.
Yeah,
kind
video
of
games, phones,
just
TikTok,
being
just
inside.
scrolling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's everywhere.
Yeah. I know. I was on the side where I didn't watch any soccer at all, because it was just, if I was awake, I'd be outside playing. I did play some video games growing up, but like mainly it was just I would just make up stupid games, stickball in the front yard, like airsoft guns, like everything.
I was lucky enough to kind of grow up with these cousins that were around a similar age, and my grandma had a big backyard, and their grandma had like another big backyard as well. So they were connected. You
said that you could almost put a full field like on this property.
Almost. Yeah. And well, there was my house on my mom's side, and we had a big property but didn't have as many people to play with. But this is on my dad's side, and there was like a lot of people that actually did play, and we'd kind of get together in the afternoons after school and just have at it and kind of play 3v3 all afternoon.
That's awesome. That sounds like a fun childhood.
Yeah.
Ecological reserve, animals, hikes, all that kind of stuff.
Just very diverse experiences, I would say, because then I'll kind of go through the story step by step a little bit. But after living in the reserve like we did, when I was around 8, my dad got offered a position at the University of Minnesota, and we moved there. My English was a little rusty at that point. I had learned it when I was just very young, but I had to like pick up on it again. And so did my sister. But yeah, ended up moving to Minnesota, lived there for a year, and then moved to Arizona the next year and lived there for another year. And then for family reasons, we had to move back to Costa Rica. And eventually we end up moving again to Washington State. So yeah, just a very kind of varied childhood where I think I went to around 10 different schools before I graduated high school. So I have a running joke of like, I don't even know what high school reunion to go to because I have so many, classmates.
Do you think so? Do you think by doing this, do you think that it was hard for you as a kid because you were always bouncing around and leaving friends, having to make new friends? Or do you think that you had a really good upbringing because you got so many different experiences and met so many people?
At the time, I would say it was a little tough kind of having to adjust every time we moved, and connect with friends, make new friends and leave old ones behind a little bit. And when you're a kid, you're not really like connecting or like keeping track of like old friends, that much.
Especially pre-social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But nowadays, looking back on it, I still keep in touch with people that I was close with when I was 8 years old, and haven't seen since, which is this opportunity in Detroit brought me some like old friendships, kind of reconnected with them. One was when I played in Minnesota, I played one of my best friends there, and his family is also super nice. We connected really well, and I hadn't seen him in over 10 years, and he moved to Michigan actually, and to Ann Arbor. And when I told him about Detroit, he was so happy. We hadn't seen each other for so long, and we hung out again after 10 years.
Wow.
And then funnily enough, we did our preseason in Arizona, in Tucson.
Yeah.
And I lived in Tucson. So I got together with another friend that I hadn't seen in over 10 years, and we hung out again. So it's just funny how life comes full circle a little bit. And then also soccer, I think it's just very special. As the longer you're in the game, the more you see the same like people that come up again, and you see them again. Yeah,
it's crazy the reconnections you can have like all over, bro. I think I was actually looking about it. I had some conversation with somebody. I think Alex asked me, he's like, do you know, like, he's like, you're always talking to somebody after the game. I was like, yeah, I think I know. I checked, I went through every single team in the USL. I know I played with or know somebody like close with on every single team in the USL championship now. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But just because of, like you said, such a small world, and I played with him here in PDL. Sure. Now he's playing there, or it's all this kind of. I trained with him in off season because I needed to have people, and I was living in Orange County at the time. It is such a small world. It's really, it's cool.
And you connect beyond the sport too. You, with some people, it's an opportunity to learn more about their life and kind of their own experiences as well, their own life story.
Look how much you've learned from me, being your, I'm your big brother. I'm walking you through these things, helping you out.
Well, yeah. I think listening to some of your stuff from before, we had a different path, right? Like not picked up right away after college, kind of tumbled around a little bit. I think that gives you a different. It makes you a little bit of a different animal, really.
It does, bro. If you get everything handed to you, you gotta have, you gotta have some adversity at times.
Yeah, absolutely.
So going back, so you bounced all around pretty much all the way up through high school, going to 10 different schools. Were you joining just club teams or academy teams at every single place that you were living? Were you just playing pickup? Like, what was the youth soccer like summed up? Like, how did that look?
So anytime we moved, my dad, he'd always take me into account and see if there's a team nearby and kind of plan things out so that I could keep playing. Because at this point, I really was thinking of playing professionally from the start, really. From a young age, kind of had set that goal for me. And I practiced like it. I mean, there were days where, and this is where maybe some of that no off days mentality comes from, but there were weeks where I would get around 50 hours of training, and no, it's true.
50 hours is like almost like 6 hours, 7 hours a day.
Yeah. I mean, in like, as a kid, you don't tire as much,
Yeah.
And so whenever we moved to like a different, let's say in Arizona, I remember I'd be on a club. I was on a club called TSA, but they only train 3 times a week. And then I find like another club that would train the rest of the time, maybe another 3 times a week. So I'd pair them together, try to make it like a full week training schedule.
Yeah.
And also I did gymnastics. My sister did gymnastics, so I was kind of roped into it.
So if you're training 3 times a week, let's say 2 hours a week with one club team.
Yeah.
You did another club team 3 times a week, 2 hours a session.
Let's say, and then
games.
I would also gymnastics. So throw maybe
some body weight training.
Once a week in there, gymnastics. I would also have like swimming lessons. And then whatever time I had outside where I was in training, I would just be out training with my dad, really. And that was
even when it's funny. Your dad came and visited.
Yeah.
And you guys were getting your own little session in at the field house.
Yeah, you noticed.
I'm like, this guy's a psychopath. What's going on? That's awesome.
No,
I really respect that. I make fun of you, but I think it's
no,
awesome.
but it became also like a father son bonding experience more than just training.
Yeah.
So he loved traiing. I love training, and that was kind of a way for us to connect.
So you really think there's weeks where you put in 50 hours a week?
I do think so. Yeah, and you can ask my dad. But yeah, no,
I'm gonna ask him after this. Send me his phone number. I'm gonna fact check.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
No, but
did you ever
that was kind of a stage in my life where I was just very involved.
Yeah, and I think everybody goes through stages like that where everything lines up right. You have a lot of free time and you just grind out hours.
Yeah.
College was like that for me. Like I would do the normal 5 days a week of training with a college team. And then I had a really good group of guys that lived with 6 guys in this house. And we would go and do extra lifts together. We go do extra training, just ball mastery stuff, work pinging long ball shots. And then like, it just felt like we were probably, I don't know if we ever got 50 hours in a week, but I think at the highest we were probably close to 30 to 35 hours.
But as a kid, you don't look at it as work, you know,
and the intensity is different too.
Yeah.
The intensity now, if you did that, you'd die.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
So now I understand. Were you ever on an academy team or was it all just club teams?
So in in Costa Rica, I was in a team called Saprissa, which is basically the biggest club there. And their academy is like, there's kind of quite a bit of prestige that comes with it. But I wasn't get a lot of playing time with them. And I was always kind of short and skinny. And at that time, guys were hitting their growth spurts. Yeah. So didn't really play in games with them. And this is kind of where I would have to find other ways to get touches, play. So I'd play with my school team, even though I wasn't allowed to. I was in academy. They didn't want me playing outside, but I had to. Yeah. So I would play with my school team, play with a cousin that also had his own team, and they were older, and then they were a good team as well. And sometimes I would go from school training to Saprissa training to at night training with my cousin. So that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So it mostly happened because I wasn't getting enough opportunities. Yeah. So in order to get those game situations in, as a young kid, you have to be playing a lot. So kind of in order to circumvent that, that's why I kind of played on so many different teams. Yeah.
I was in something kind of similar where I was like, there's a couple of years where I was right in between the A team and the B team of my club team. And it was like the damned if you do, damned if you don't. If I'm on the A team, then I'm on the bench a lot coming off. And then if I was on the B team, I was the best player. I felt like it wasn't challenging enough. So then I would train with both teams or play with both teams. And it was it honestly was the best thing ever, because then you get challenged in training by better players, but then you get to have those games where you're playing the 10 and I'm just Iniesta out there, Kevin De Bruyne just chopping it up, you know? Now you can see how I have that midfielder tendency right back. But no, that's really cool. I like that. I mean, I've seen the training grind from you. So
I think having that balance of challenging yourself, but also having a little bit of that confidence builder is the perfect spot for you to develop. Because if you're training at a level where you feel you can't try things, especially as a young kid, you don't want to be there. So that for me was my cousin's team, kind of a little bit lower stakes. I was always like the younger guy, come and join us, but you don't really have that pressure of like trying to play, you know?
Yeah. It's talking about how like the world like comes full circle and how small of a world it is. One of the friends that would push me all the time to train when I was living in college, he went to go play for Saprissa. And I think I told you about this. Did I not tell you about this?
The Del Campo.
Yeah, Ramon Del Campo. Ramon Martin Del Campo. I lived with him in college. He was a groomsman at my wedding. He's a lunatic, this guy, but I love him. And he really pushed me every single day to like work harder, train more, go to the gym. And he ended up playing for Saprissa for a year or 2 years.
Yeah, I remember that. I didn't actually personally meet him.
Yeah.
But I would see him training because we would train in the same facility. And at that point, I think I was with the U20s actually. So there was one spell where I was actually playing up. I was 17 at that time, but I was playing with the U20s, and I would see the first team come in, and he would be there. Yeah, so that's funny. Again, small world. Yeah.
So you lived in Costa Rica between what ages? You said you're there.
Well, I would say like half my life, but the thing is, so there were several periods where I lived in Costa Rica. The first one would be from around 4 to 8. Then from maybe 11 to 14, around there. 11 to 13. Then I went to Washington State, played for the Sounders Academy. At that point, they actually didn't have a proper academy team for me. Yeah. It was just starting out. The MLS.
What year was this? 2010, 2011 or something like that?
This was like 2012, around there.
That's close.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they had a U16 team, but nothing below that. And I was just around 13, 14. So what they ended up doing was making a pre-academy team. And kind of played with them. It wasn't ideal because we weren't in the DA system. So we weren't like traveling across the country playing other teams. We're kind of more local. I think we played State Cup actually. Yeah. So it was kind of...
Gotta love State Cup, man.
It was kind of different.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't end up sticking around there. While I was still in Washington State, I decided to go to a different club. I went to Pac Northwest, it's called. They actually trained in the same facility, but it also allowed me to play high school, and I got that experience as well. Mercer Island High School. I lived in Mercer Island, Washington. Also, some of the most fun I've had playing soccer as well.
Why?
We had it's just... later on in college, I would kind of feel similar feeling, but it was just playing with your friends, right? You're kind of with your friends throughout the day, and then at the end of the day, after all your classes are done, you're playing with them, and I feel like you make some connections that even like translate to the field. Like you just know where people are. They're your friends. Like you played with them. And actually, our high school team had a lot of talent. Yeah. I think sometimes high school soccer is a little discredited, but
at least then, though, because there wasn't much academy.
Yeah, at that point, I was just starting out.
There was a lot even when I was growing up, like high school soccer was the cream of the crop because there's no academy. There's no academies in the state of Oregon. So the best players played for their high schools. Yeah. They played for their local club teams. So yeah, it's obviously not great like academies are now, but it was not. You have guys that went pro that were playing high school.
Oh, for sure. Like even Jordan Morris, who now plays for the Sounders. He went to Mercer Island High School. He actually was a senior, or he had just left when I came in as a freshman.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then from our team, actually, we had some guys that actually went to University of Washington and were drafted later on, and also guys that played college in D1. So yeah, it was a good level.
And then did you go from Mercer? Did you graduate from Mercer Island High School?
No.
And moved again?
I moved again. And this time I went back when I was 16, 17
to Costa Rica again. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah,
that's
that makes
when
sense.
I played in Saprissa again. So anytime I was back in Costa Rica, I was playing for Saprissa usually, for their academy. And this time I went back, that's when I was playing up with the U20s. And actually I just because of the time frame, I wasn't able to join the traditional schooling system. So I was able to work it out with my school in Mercer Island. They had an online system they used for me to continue. And actually, like, I did my 11th and my 12th grades. So yeah, my junior, senior year, I actually did them online in high school.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah. So I was taking classes in English from kind of this online system called Apex Learning. And I was at that time still playing. I was, just because of the travel, I had to, basically it was 2 hours to get to training, and at Saprissa they moved their whole facility. And yeah, it was a lot of travel. So by the time I was done training, we'd get in there. Let's say I left my house, I'd leave at like 5:30 in the morning, get to training at 7. And then by the time I was done, everything showered up, it'd probably be noon. So there was no way I was getting back to school and like any sort of traditional school. So what we did, just online, I would get back and then just work on my own in my computer. On your neuroscience stuff. At that point, that wasn't the thing.
Not yet.
But I actually ended up, just because of that travel and that, I actually ended up moving to a club that was much closer, my hometown club. At that point, they were first division. But actually, I played the U20 tournament with them. And at the end of that year, the club actually went down to second division. So I was kind of caught up in two minds of, do I want to stay? Do I want to leave? Because now that we're in second division, like, I don't want to play U20s because the quality kind of drops. But I decided to stay. And the circumstances behind this relegation were crazy. I think they had to win 1 game out of 8 or just tie 1 game out of 10 or something like that. Yeah. And they couldn't do it and went down. So it was very kind of a little bit of a uncertain time. But I decided to stick it out. And I actually wasn't playing that much for the U20 team. But they told me, hey, you can come for preseason for the first team. And I said, oh, of course. I'll join you. And in preseason, you play like the top clubs, some of the first division clubs as well. And I started doing really well. They started giving me more playing time. I was the only U20 player that ended up making onto the squad. So that was kind of, it made me realize that kind of that hard work was starting to pay off really for me at that age. And I was kind of starting to break through. That year, I scored. I started a few games. We actually made the playoffs.
What was this team's name? Sorry.
Urugauy de Coronado. Okay. Yeah, this is kind of my hometown club. It's less than a mile from our house. My grandpa's house actually. So I was doing real well. And just when things were going the best, I think I had scored around 3 goals in the last 3 games or around there. And everything was kind of going the right direction. I was thinking even of, okay, maybe next year I'm going to make the jump to first division and who knows after that. But one day in training, I just felt the sharp pain in my knee. and went down, and we didn't know what it is. Had barely been injured before that. Hadn't felt anything. Had no troubles. And at first, I played on it. I think I played a game with it as well, and then it like started getting caught again. So I was like, no, there's definitely something wrong. Got imaging done, and the first opinion said that I had completely screwed up my knee. I had like ACL, everything. But we got a second opinion, and they actually said, "Oh, it's just meniscus. It's fine. Like this isn't bad. This isn't that bad." But they gave me the choice of either kind of taking out the part of the meniscus that was affected or sewing it together.
Yeah.
And at that point, I kind of decided, since I was pretty young, I wanted to kind of save as much as I could to give more longevity for later years. And that's a longer recovery process. It's around 6 or 7 months. So I ended up kind of going through that, just slow rehab. And at that time, that's when I started to consider the option of college in the US. I had already lived here, had already played here, so I kind of was a little familiar with the process. There was a little spell once I recovered from the injury where or this was actually before I actually got my starts and everything with Urugauy. I'd actually come to the Sounders again, so just on a little trial, just because that was in the back of my head of like coming back to the States eventually and going to college. But when Urugauy started giving me playing time, I actually talked to the University of Washington head coach, and I told him, hey, do you think it's best if I'm getting playing time here? Like, it's second division, it's pretty high level, versus coming here and playing with the U18s for the Sounders. And he said, well, if you're playing at that level already, like playing, let's say at the professional level, then I think it's better for you to take that opportunity. So I ended up not coming back to the States at that period of time, but I waited a little bit. And once I recovered from my meniscus injury, actually they had to go back in and take a little bit of it out.
Yeah.
So it ended up being like a whole year of recovery.
And you're like 20, 21 at this time? Or
I was 19. I had just turned 19, or was about to turn 19. And in the meantime, I'm finishing up school online.
Yeah.
There isn't really like a set calendar that I'm sticking to. I'm just completing classes as they go.
Yeah.
And hoping that I will finish this someday. And so I did get it. In the
back of your mind, you're still thinking there's a possibility of college. It's still there. But you're like, I'm going all in on this professional route. Hopefully play in the first division of Costa Rica.
Exactly. That's before the injury.
It's like a backup plan.
That's before the injury. Once the injury happens, then it really becomes the other way around. I really start taking the college path way more seriously.
Yeah.
And so I start emailing different programs, go through that process of, I didn't really know anything about the American system, but I had kind of in the back of your head, you kind of hear about the big programs, right? And so I just basically made a list of the best programs that I kind of would love to go to, or would kind of that were making a little bit of noise at that time.
Yeah.
And also I was very fortunate because there was actually this MLS legend that he was Costa Rican and he played for the Chicago Fire, that I got to know through a friend of my dad's. And I sent him some videos and he liked what he saw. So he told me, hey, I have some contacts that you can use if you'd like, of different coaches. And he sent me a list of maybe 10 programs. And among those are, Wake Forest. I think Virginia was in there. VCU. And Creighton was in there. And I actually, of all of the schools I emailed, maybe around half of them came back.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that was actually, I was surprised at the amount of kind of interest that I got at first, because I had gone to a little showcase in Costa Rica, and the guy who was running it basically told me, hey, nah, you're not going D1. There's no way. Like,
isn't it crazy the difference of opinions like that?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
You have to you believe in yourself.
Yeah.
You know that you take a realistic mindset of like, am I good enough? But like, it is a game of opinions, you know? And obviously all the opinions could say, no, you're not good enough. But like, it just takes one. I always tell my dad would always say that. It doesn't matter. He's like, it doesn't matter if this school says no or this school. It just takes one school for you to say yes that likes you and you are a D1 athlete. Or, you know.
And imagine if I had just like stuck to that, just that one opinion of me, I just wouldn't have emailed a lot of D1 schools. Yeah. And that would have been my path. Yeah. But thankfully I did.
And you would have been doing brain surgery.
Oh, I don't know. You never know. Yeah. So the first email actually I got back from Creighton was from Coach Elmar Valovich. He'd been around for like 30 years. And he got back to me right away. And I was so lucky because the first email back, he was like, yeah, we'll have you on board, and it'll be a full scholarship. So it's kind of a little bit of a no-brainer. Yeah. I was also talking to different schools, and I actually delayed it a little bit because just I didn't know, like, that was so rare to find kind of an offer right away. And my contact, Gonzalo, he actually was, Danny, like, what are you waiting on?
Yeah. This is not going to get any better than this.
Yeah, you should take this right away.
My first email back, it was from a D3 school, said, we'll give you $10 and a free lunch. And I was like, wait a little bit about it. Yeah. You're different. And I think I sent out 100 emails and got one back. So, but I wasn't training with the professional team at 19. I was...
It's interesting. And I also thought, well, I wasn't on a national team either. Yeah. I had been on like a little camp, but nothing beyond that. So there's even guys above you that they tout a little higher. Yeah. But actually, like, they took a big leap with me at Creighton because I wasn't fully healed up. I went on my official visit with my dad. I went to Creighton, but I was still like limping around. I wasn't fully fit.
That's a bad look.
Yeah.
Hey, coach.
Yeah. So at that point I couldn't play yet. I couldn't play. I was doing my rehab, but they went off the highlight tapes, the videos that I sent, and they put a lot of trust in Gonzalo Segares' word. So I got really lucky with that whole experience, to be fair.
It's also awesome too. Like, your dad's been there every step of the way, and with how much you've moved, like, I was really fortunate. Like, I stayed put from 6 until 18, but then from 18 and on, it's just been bouncing around like a pinball everywhere. And like, just for me moving my own self, it's a lot of work. And everything you don't think about, changing your address, doing this, changing this. And your dad was doing this with new jobs everywhere with the family. And then also with the mindset of like, okay, now not only do we need to get him set up on a school system and everything, but find teams for him, do this for you. Like, he put in the work to like really facilitate where your whole career.
You really have to respect that. And I really appreciate it. And also, he wasn't only doing it for me. He was looking out for my sister as well. Are there any like gymnastics academies that she can join? Schools, because that's a big part also in my household. And so he really took everything into account, even like some job offers that didn't come to be. Yeah. I remember there was one job offer in Canada, one in Australia, one in Norwich, in England. Wow. So he'd be looking at Norwich City and their whole setup, and we'd be fascinated with what they were doing over there. But he'd be invested in all of these jobs and offers. And when you're that invested and you're among like the final candidates, but then it doesn't happen for you, it's much more of a blow.
Yeah.
And we had that a few times where we actually, okay, we're probably going to go here, but then it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. And I've been there on the professional side where you get talking to coaches, they're talking numbers. I'm talking to my wife and she's looking up on Zillow, like apartments. And I'm like, don't get your hopes up or down, just level headed. Yeah. You know, we'll wait till we put pen to paper and then we'll figure out all the details, but it's impossible to wait. You're always thinking and all that stuff. So that's cool. So you ended up going and signing to play at Creighton. Official visit must have went well, even with you limping around. How was your college experience at Creighton?
It was great. I loved it. Obviously I was going there with the idea, still pursuing kind of I knew I was putting professional soccer a little bit on the back burner. I wanted to pursue it, but I knew maybe this wasn't going to be avenue one, right? This was kind of a detour and a way for me to study and also play, and kind of. But I think that at that point, soccer wise, it would have made more sense to me for me to continue playing kind of at the level that I was at. But I think I definitely needed to develop in other areas of my life. Just as a student, I would say it was a big part of why I made the move. As a person, kind of living independently, and just in all areas of life, not necessarily soccer. I definitely grew.
But you did take the easy way out with your major, though, right?
I chose neuroscience.
Yeah, and so like you want to challenge yourself in that. It seems like you always want to challenge yourself, and you just said school. No, I'll just take the easy major.
Yeah, exactly. The healthy lifestyle. I think that was one of the majors that we had at Creighton.
So when you chose that healthy lifestyle,
that's a major.
That would have been that's
some of my friends did that.
That's a Connor Rutz major right there. Rutsy would be signed up.
Well, shout out to Rutz.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So were you thinking with neuroscience?
I talked to basically my parents were always kind of heavy into science and biology. So I knew I wanted to do something related to that. And then kind of in the soccer side of things, I wanted to have something that could also apply to what I was doing athletically, kind of. So I saw kind of that link of like how you function, like in your decision making when you're playing, and that biology, the biology of your body, you know, like how you process things, how you decide on a pass or not. So I just saw that kind of link and ran with it. And I mean, I'm someone that loves to be busy, really, and so having that outside of training was kind of the perfect balance for me. Maybe I think at some point it would.
I don't even. That's just crazy. It's just so funny to me. This doesn't seem like a balance at all. It just seems like it's like a two full-time things.
Yeah, but at some point it did get heavy. Like maybe towards my sophomore year, when you're taking more challenging classes and kind of staying up a little bit later, and then you start to see, okay, is this affecting my playing? And that's when I kind of tried just different things to see what worked in terms of maybe putting a little bit more time into my recovery and just prioritizing maybe some courses over others, kind of scheduling. Like you have to at some point kind of weigh things a little differently and put your time into one versus the other.
Did you have a social life? Like, did you go like hang out with the guys and everything?
Yeah, no, I definitely did. I mean, I would say my first 2 years were probably, there were some guys that were probably the ones that kind of strung me along a little bit and kind of told me to come out and have fun a little bit more. And that was kind of towards the end of my first year, second year, where I kind of started to develop some like more meaningful friendships with teammates and also outside of the team, where I hung out a little bit more, and then grades suffered it just a little bit.
Yeah.
But I found that balance, right?
Yeah.
That we're talking about.
Yeah. That's all. I mean, that's credit to you. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, I was applied math in college.
Yeah, that's really tough as well.
But my grades were terrible.
But that's the thing. Like that,
for me, it was soccer, social life in college a lot, and then math. Like I was told, I was like, I don't know.
But it was hard. You still managed.
Yeah, I still passed. Yeah,
and that's the thing. Like, some people think just because you're in neuroscience that you're gonna have like top grades, or I was kind of scraping by with some of these classes. Like, you're still putting in a lot of work, and I feel like it also teaches you to not like kind of expect just because you're working super hard that you're gonna have the best results.
Yeah.
Kind of living with the idea, okay, of maybe I didn't perform or I didn't get the best grade, but I still learned a lot.
Yeah.
I still got what I wanted out of this course, so I can still move forward. And a lot of people are just, I think it just hurts them. It hurts their ego a little bit when they get a bad grade. So I think you toughen yourself up a little bit like that.
Yeah, you do. You do get a D and you're like, oh my God. After putting 20 hours of studying, you're like,
exactly. Some people can't live with that.
Yeah. So at this time though, it did, you kind of even mentioned it. It seems like soccer, like you were still training really hard. You were playing well, but it almost was less of a pro football or bust type mindset. You still had like, I'm going to get this for balancing out your different stages of your life.
Obviously you get the springtime, right? When you're in college where it's kind of on your own time, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you do have like your structured trainings. There's really no games.
Yeah.
So those weekends, it's on you how you use your time. And I would usually use it studying, training a little bit. But some guys would kind of not use them the best way, and kind of come fall time, I think that would kind of show a little bit, you know. Some guys would take him way too lightly. And for me, I mean, using those periods was critical, because if I didn't, then in the fall, it was just a mess. Because you're traveling, you're missing classes. You try to schedule the easier classes in the fall, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So that's kind of how you squeak by.
All right. So you're 4 years at Creighton. How on the field, how were you performing at this point? Were you trying to look at the draft, or especially towards the end? How did that look?
So I think at the start, as a freshman, I think I started most games, was really kind of doing well. So I envisioned that was going to be the path for me. That actually at Creighton at that time, it was kind of usual that 2 or 3 guys would get drafted every year. So if you were kind of that standout that year, you were likely gonna be there, right? So I kind of had that vision.
There's Gucci. Let me get her out of here. Come here. Get out of here.
I was trying not to pay attention, and then it just became unavailable.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, where was I?
So you had the vision of possibly being drafted.
Possibly being drafted, and so the first year went really well in terms of that. Like, it was looking up. It was still kind of a little bit of a shift coming to the States. I kind of knew like the way the game was played here, but there's a lot more emphasis on fitness. Our spring routine would be getting in for heavy lifts.
Oh yeah.
Which
Were
I
you
had
doing
never,
like power cleans and like crazy trap bar
Olympic
deadlift?
lifting.
Yes.
Yeah, which I had never done.
Yeah.
I was actually the year before, I had just like really recently started going to the gym full time, like outside of training. Before then, I was always doing gymnastics, like no organized lifting or anything like that. So it's still fairly new to me. And also, yeah, I think I gained quite a bit of weight that first year. A little bit of snacking while I was studying.
That's the dangerous combo in college. It's
Yeah.
the heavy Olympic weightlifting
With
paired
eating.
with the unlimited food in the dining commons. Like it's a bad combo for a lot of players.
I think I gained quite a bit of weight,
Yeah.
and then I was always trying to lose it a little bit to kind of feel back like I used to feel before. But it still, considering everything, it went well. I actually didn't get a goal though as a freshman, which is a little disappointing for me because of how much I played.
Yeah.
I got a few assists, but no goal.
And what position were you playing in college?
I was playing as a wing, actually. Yeah. But we had a great team that first year. We actually, a lot of guys that went on to play the USL, MLS a little bit. So definitely a high level. We were kind of a possession-based team. We'd kind of dominate possession every game. And I think we went like 10 games where we didn't lose or we didn't tie, like just undefeated. And then towards the end of the season, the wheels started to fall off a little bit. Like just, I think the physical part of like a college season is so brutal
because you're going back to back games.
Sometimes you have a Friday game with a Sunday game right after.
And it's so short and condensed that like then they don't want to have any of their starters take any time off because it's like we only have 20 games.
Yeah, exactly.
In a 3-month period, we need you.
Yeah, and if you get a little knock, then you're out for already like 3 games, and that's a big part of the season. But also like the subbing rule, the unlimited subs in the second half.
Golden goal. That's my most American opinion. Most American opinion. Golden goal.
Rather have a golden goal.
Oh my God. Golden goal extra time is the best. You
Actually,
score 115th minute. You're not, bro, you won the game.
That's not I don't see that as like a really out there idea, to be fair.
It is a very American mindset.
But the unlimited subs, that's just bad. That's really bad. And also the running countdown of the clock.
Oh, that's terrible. The buzzer. You hear you take a shot and the buzzer. You're like, what? That's terrible. Terrible. But the one thing they do right, in my opinion, golden goal.
Yeah, and they got rid of it. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. I didn't know that. So now you can have, before that, I think maybe in the postseason you do have golden goal. But in the regular season, you used to, like, every time you tied, you go into overtime. So that'd be like 30 or like whenever, until someone scored the golden goal. If not, it'd just be a tie. But
in 2011, I think, or something, one of the years when I was in college, we set the record for the most amount of minutes played and most ties, because we had like 11 ties in our season, all 1-1 or 0-0 games, which meant that we had to do the most extra time. And we actually had a few extra time, like wins and everything, but we had the most minutes.
Oh my God.
And bro, your body with the extra time, 120 minutes on Friday, Sunday. Oh yeah. It was terrible.
That happened to me on my last year at Fordham. We had like 9 ties or something, but at this time they weren't doing overtime anymore.
Gotcha.
So we were a little bit saved by that.
But, and then the problem too, you think, oh, unlimited subs, so it's easier. But the problem is they do that, and at least for us, it was like you have 20 minutes to run your everything off.
Yeah, like the guys that are coming in fresh.
Yeah,
and they're maybe coming in for, some coaches do even like, okay, I'll put you in for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then these guys are just coming in super hard for, let's say, this amount of time. And then they know they're off. So the next guy just comes in, does the same thing.
We had a couple players who their only job was like, don't touch the ball, just press. Oh my God. Press.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, it's a different sport sometimes. Yeah.
It is. So you did 4 years at Creighton though.
Yeah. So after my second season, also started most games, but we didn't perform that well as a team. We had a lot of injuries. And third and fourth year, actually, well, COVID happened before my junior season. And so that, I mean, as we all experienced, we kind of, I went back home to Costa Rica. I actually ended up getting injured during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I was basically like, I was going a little crazy. I wanted to train. So I think it was one of the first sessions when I was back in the gym. I was doing a deadlift and felt a little pop in my back. And so I didn't know what it was, kind of dealt with it. Maybe it was like a little spasm. Actually, that was maybe during June, and we were getting ready to go back to Creighton because maybe I would have a season that fall. We just didn't know. But they were telling us, hey, you have to come because we're gearing up for the season. And actually, my sister was starting college that same year, and she was going to a school in Minnesota called McAllister College. So I was kind of in conversations with the coach, and he told me, hey, if you come right now, you have to do 14 days of quarantine in one room. You can't leave. They'll bring you food like once a day. So I reached out to friends that was at Creighton, but he was living in Minnesota with his family. And I told him, hey, do you think you could have me and my sister for a few weeks? And he agreed. This family is one of the nicest you'll meet.
Yeah.
And they had us living there for around 2 weeks, just kind of getting my sister settled in for her college. My parents weren't able to come because at that point, tickets were super expensive. There weren't even flights from Costa Rica to the US. But there were some flights that were for Americans going back to the US. So my sister and I are American, so we were able to fly.
Jeez.
And so I ended up kind of bypassing that little quarantine.
Yeah.
I still isolated for a few days. And then we ended up driving back to Creighton for that, gearing up for that fall. But my back was still giving me issues. I actually went in to have it looked at, and they told me, yeah, you have a back fracture. You have a bilateral fracture in your like L5 S1. And actually, like, the only way you're maybe gonna like get better is if you work out your core, because you're always gonna it's always gonna bother you. They told me. One doctor even told me, hey, you're not going to be able to play again at a high level. You can't play every day. Actually, they told that to me with the knee, when at first they didn't know what it was. They were like, it looks like you're not going to be able to play again. They're always pretty conservative and kind of shoot your dreams down a little.
I was told that once. Yeah. It's terrible. And then you're like, I need a second opinion right now. But yeah, I was told that. And funnily enough, it wasn't the deadlift. It was something else I had done like maybe a year ago that maybe I felt when I was doing that motion.
Gotcha. But it could have been like one of the heavy lifts we had or something like that. Yeah. And then we didn't end up having that season, but it turned out good for me because I was injured. So I kind of took it at my own pace, got back to fitness, and we played that next spring of 2021. 2021. And we had like a little condensed season where we weren't playing everyone. It was just like a little section of the conference that we played. So that wasn't really a full year, I would call it, of college soccer. And I was still like recovering from the injury. Yeah. And after that, I kind of stayed in Omaha for that summer. I actually worked out with our trainer there because I was doing research. At that point, I had to get like a little research credit in for my neuroscience major. And so I had to stay that summer. And I was doing research on Parkinson's. Wow. Yeah, and
you're a hell of a man.
I was doing research and also doing fitness with our fitness coach the whole summer. That was probably one of the craziest summers I've
I would have told him I'm gone and I would just have trained by myself.
Yeah. And actually, so it was a few of us, and then one of the guys that had gone to play summer didn't like his team. His name is Duncan McGuire. He plays for Orlando City now. And he came back and he trained with us as well. But this guy is just a different beast when it comes to anything fitness. He'd be beating me every time, but pushing me as well. So I think that season, my senior year, probably felt the most fit that I've ever felt. But I already had a little bit of a different role. My coach had kind of approached me and told me, hey, we're not going to be able to keep you on for, we'll keep you on for this fall, kind of for my senior year. But they had originally kind of came to me with the offer of a 5th year and kind of had to backtrack just because of COVID. They didn't have enough resources. So I was basically told to look elsewhere for my 5th year. And I really couldn't do anything less than what I was on. So I didn't really end how I wanted in terms of like the whole thing, the draft that I envisioned, maybe the team making it very far and getting that exposure. But it was still a very rewarding experience nonetheless. And also academically met some great people. And I knew I kind of wanted to take it in a different direction academically, just to give myself kind of a different option after finishing my undergrad. I kind of had this idea of maybe going to med school even, but that, or even research, that wasn't compatible with soccer at all. And I definitely knew that I wanted to keep playing. So for my 5th year, I decided to kind of go into something a little bit more compatible in terms of like working from home and being a little more flexible. And that was data science. So decided to pursue a master's in data science. And then throughout that season, my 4th year at Creighton, I was kind of in and out of the starting lineup, and also kind of prioritizing that next step maybe. So the coach kind of knew he wouldn't have me around and was maybe playing me around other players and kind of prioritizing other people a little bit more. So I looked at different schools and Fordham came back, and they were it was a bit of a short time frame just because I wanted to come in for the spring and continue my schooling. So just because of that time frame, I think I didn't have that many offers at that point. And but I was still very happy with what Fordham could offer. Met some of the teammates, and they were some of the most amazing guys I've shared a locker room with. And I decided to go to Fordham and try my luck there. I knew it would be maybe a little bit more difficult to go in through that traditional draft system. But at that point, it had dawned on me that wasn't going to be my path. I was going to have to go on trials and reach out different ways through emails and contacts and network and
grind a little more.
That was going to be my path. I was going to have to go through the cracks a little bit more.
And so you had that 5th year at Fordham then. And then, so how did that next step of trying, because it also too, so you wanted to give it a go of trying to play pro versus, even though you have a fantastic undergrad, you have a master's degree, you weren't thinking, I want to just enter the workforce.
No, never occurred to me. Never occurred to me.
It was just straight, how can I play pro?
Yeah.
And how'd you make those steps?
And as I said, like even from the first time I set foot in college, I always knew that I wanted to keep playing. I didn't know how, I didn't know where, but I was probably going to keep playing. So the next steps, I mean, as at Fordham, I actually played a little bit of a different role, played more of a false 9 in a 4-4-2.
Okay.
So I kind of had to fight for scraps a little bit there. But I think we had a great team spirit as well. In the end, it didn't quite happen for us. We actually had to win one game to make it into the tournament, and we were playing a non-conference game before that, and I was on the bench just kind of trying to save my legs a little bit. But we were losing against Princeton, so the coach decided to give it a go and put me in. And I think, we were losing 3-1. We scored the second one, so it's 3-2. We're going for it. And there's like a little coming together where I'm like going for the ball. My parents are actually in the stands. They flew in from Costa Rica because it's senior night. And where there's a little coming together where I just go for the ball. It's a little bit of 50-50. And I get a yellow, but it's unfair. It's definitely an unfair yellow. And this is maybe like the 89th minute. And then you get the countdown, right? The 10, 9. And then they lump it up to me. And I'm running through on goal. And I slide for the ball because it's me and the center back. We're both like going for it. I slide for it. And he just goes to ground. And the ref gives me a second yellow.
Oh, no.
So I was sent off in my last college game. Yeah.
What an exit.
Yeah. Gotta go for it, man.
I mean, you have to,
Yeah. And my poor coach, he was, he couldn't plan for the, he was planning to use me that next game to see if we could get that win and get into the playoffs, but it backfired.
Damn. Well, I mean, you have to go for it though. You have to slide, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the only red card I've ever gotten.
Knock on wood.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow. And then
and so right after that, I kind of knew my season was over. It was actually like a pretty depressing time because my parents were over there. Couldn't play that next game. I was just kind of sitting out and kind of suffering from the sidelines, hoping we'd get it done, but in the end we couldn't. And I remember just like that sudden feeling of it's over and I don't really know what's next. I don't really have anything set up. I know that I'm gonna have to work my contacts and see if I can make something happen, but I know it's gonna be very tough. And so actually, like, I cried for a little bit. And my parents were there, and it was kind of a tough moment.
I mean, because you go. Like that is a hard moment because you're like excited about what could possibly come, but at the same time, like it's an end of a chapter, a big one, and you don't know if it's
I always kind of stuck to the rules of not reaching out to too many people, like agents, while you're in college, because then you could lose your eligibility.
Yeah.
You put yourself at risk that way, and like put your education at risk. So I was always pretty serious about that. So I guess I could have done a little bit more. I looking back, I definitely could.
You could do more of the gray area stuff. Grab coffee.
Yeah.
Oh, we're just hanging out.
Talk to a friend. Talk to a friend that was already like playing on a pro team. And I did, but usually when these guys are kind of having their first professional year, they can't really make something happen for you. So
because they're just worried about getting their career started.
Exactly. And I don't blame them.
Yeah.
But it's that like you feel like kind of that you're kind of being helped by other people and you feel bad about that of like texting someone, hey, can you like possibly speak to so-and-so? Like I really need an opportunity.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're kind of, every time you do that, it's a little bit, it weighs on you.
Yeah.
So yeah, at that time, didn't really have anything going for me, but there's these little blessings that life gives you that puts people in the right spots for you and great people. I think in my case, I was playing with the son of the Toronto FC president, current Toronto FC president. And he approached me after one game and told me, hey, if you don't have any options, just go ahead and email me and we can figure something out. because apparently he saw something in me. He liked what he saw, and so I sent him my videos, my CV, and he got me set up with a trial at Toronto FC with their second team. And so that at least even that having that just an opportunity made me say, okay, I'm going for it. Like this is still we're good. This is still part of the plan.
Yeah.
And
it's not over yet.
Yeah, it's not over yet. So I ended up going there, and they paid for my luggage. They paid for everything. And so I figured, okay, I must be. There must not be a lot of guys at this combine or at this trial. And I get there and it's like 50 guys. Yeah. And it's just a combine of a few days, just kind of fighting it out. I think Yanni was there. Yeah. Well, I don't know if he was at the club for sure. He was there. I don't know if he was right there at that time. But it's funny because now he's our assistant coach.
It's a small world.
Yeah. But didn't end up making it there. I think part of the reason was, obviously there's several reasons, but one of those reasons was my age. I graduated when I was 24. So they were looking for someone a little younger for their MLS Next Pro team. And I think that's the trend with those teams nowadays.
Yeah.
I didn't really know about that, to be fair. Like, I still thought that they would, like, my age wasn't that much of a restriction. But I ended up then going through my college coach at Fordham and a few other connections. I ended up going to Sporting KC second team on trial again. Did preseason with them for around 2 weeks and ended up getting cut before their preseason trip. So that was kind of like a second blow. And we actually played Union Omaha when we were there. And I kind of knew about Union Omaha because I played at Creighton. And I talked to the coach actually after the game. We played Union. This was kind of desperation, man.
Yeah, I love this.
So I kind of talked to the coach after the game. I told him, hey, I don't know if you're able to see me out there today, but because I knew at that point, like, that Sporting weren't continuing with me. So I was like, oh, I got to try. So I caught him like when he was leaving, and through other contacts also, he got my information as well. So it wasn't just me, but I kind of talked to him again and told him, hey, I'm free. I can come to Omaha. But I think at that point, it was pretty clear that it's going to be an uphill battle. They already had kind of their roster set up for the season.
I've once gotten cut from a coach from a team. It's over in Germany. He's like, no, we just don't have the budget for you. We think you're a great player, blah, 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 but we can't afford to house you in visa and all this kind of stuff. It's like, no problem. Do you know any other coaches around here that you could talk to me for? Yeah. Just out of the blue. And he goes, actually, yeah, my brother plays for this team. Yeah. He's like, I guess I could talk to the coach of one of our rivals and see, and it worked. But like, you gotta ask, you gotta try.
Yeah, if that's true. And sometimes I regret it at some of these opportunities that didn't quite come off, of like talking to the coach and telling him, hey, do you have anything out there that you think could line up for me? Or just get a little bit more feedback in general. Because sometimes they tell you, okay, you're not going to continue with us, but you don't really know why. So yeah, that's something that I would definitely do over if I could a little bit more. But yeah, after Union Omaha, actually we went to FC Tulsa, played them, and had a little bit of a big chance that I missed, and kind of kicked myself after that, just because I mean, when you score, I mean, sometimes it can help.
It really helps, yeah.
Especially as a striker, or as an offensive player. So didn't happen for me there, but I just went. This is probably maybe the lowest point where you're just going back home with nothing out there for you.
I've been there,
yeah. That's a really tough time where you kind of it's hard to find the motivation really, because you're training, but you don't really have a goal in sight, or in terms of like an very tangible option right now. So that was me. I moved back in with my parents. They had actually just moved from Costa Rica to Orange County, and they're still there. They moved last year. And this is 2023. And my dad got offered a position at Chapman University. So this is maybe hopefully our last move, because it's been a lot, but I don't know. Well, it depends on them and how they're feeling, but they're on the older side a little bit and they want to settle down. I mean, but this was kind of maybe the last ditch effort to be a little closer to us, because we both came to study here in the States and we're American, and they want to be a little bit just kind of be there for us a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and actually it ended up working out, because my sister is going to grad school in UC Irvine now. So she's going to be living at home a little bit. So it works out. But at that point, ideally I would have wanted a team near home, something just kind of, I mean, Orange County's there, but they weren't calling. So, I actually reached out to Orange County a few times and didn't work out. And didn't really know about any teams in the area. So our landlord actually offered for me to go and train with a UPSL team, just to kind of stay fit. He sets me up with this UPSL team that train at night, but it's you still appreciate it, like the effort that people put in, but sometimes it's not the most organized, right? You're just kind of showing up, and people that are not playing the right positions, they're kind of like tactically, there's like no sense of awareness. Center backs just dribbling out, just trying to be like the number 10s.
It's chaos.
Exactly. So you make do with that, right? But you obviously hope to get somewhere better at some point. And at this point, I'm taking like maybe one course. Fordham allowed me, I didn't quite finish my master's, so they allowed me to continue online. So at this point, I'm maybe taking one class, but the rest of the time I'm kind of hoping and emailing people, and just hoping for a chance to at least train with a team. And so the first chance that comes up is actually a team it's actually the UC Irvine coach. Through my Creighton coach, he reached out to the UC Irvine coach. The UC Irvine coach then told me, hey, I know someone in San Diego. So I ended up going to San Diego Albion, but that's 2 hours from my house. And so there was this other guy, a keeper, his name is Jake Hansen, and he was training. He was going from Corona to San Diego as well. And he was just taking that big drive. So I'd come with him. But he just decided, okay, this is too much for like the money that I'm getting. And he was very passionate of like playing as well. But at some point, I guess it gets to be too much. So I had to, they didn't have housing. So I had to basically tell them that I couldn't do it. So I did part of their little preseason there, and then went back home again, trained with the UPSL team. And then I found out about the Los Angeles Force, which is closer. And they were training like in Irvine, and that was way better. Even training, even just if only just training, that was much better situation. And the owner, Bob Friedland, he was at one of the trainings one day. There was like a ton of guys actually, like just coming in and out every day. And he saw me at training and told me, hey, you can come to our Nisa Nation game, which is kind of like, there's Nisa and then there's like a lower league. Even in Nisa. And so he told me to come out that weekend, and so I came out to a few of their games, like it must have been like 3 or 4. Meanwhile, I was also playing with the UPSL team. So I would have like 2 games a weekend, pretty much. And just trying to get as many touches in as I could.
You're at this point now, because I've been there. I've been in this exact spot where you run out of your professional opportunities. You start dwindling. You're reaching for straws. You're training with a UPSL or NPSL team or something, and you're going like, were you reevaluating your life and your decisions at this point and thinking like, should I just stay at Fordham, finish my master's, and got a job? Or are you still like gung ho on getting this pro contract?
At some point, like, you can really only goes for so long without something changing, right? Without you getting kind of that boost of, say, another opportunity. But I knew in the States, it's a little different than Costa Rica, because in Costa Rica, you have a split season. So halfway through the year, in June, July, they evaluate again, like their rosters and everything. So you have like another opportunity halfway through the year to make a team or train with the team in preseason. But here you don't have that. It's kind of a full year. Some teams are bringing in guys like throughout the year, but it's really not the best time. The best time is preseason, right? So I knew, like, realistically, once Union Omaha said no, that potentially, like, my only opportunity would be to go back home to Costa Rica halfway through the year. So I had that in the back of my mind. At least, like, that was what I was preparing for, and kind of talking to contacts in Costa Rica to see if that could even be a possibility. So yeah, LA Force end up playing with their second team, and then their owner says, "Oh, I think you can play for our first team." So he invites me to actually, to play with the first team, and the first game we have was actually in Maryland. So we traveled out here. You know how travel is with like these lower teams, and I mean, it's not the best, but it's honestly way better than what I had at the time. Yeah. So
beggars can't be choosers at this point.
Yeah, and it's still competitive. I mean, some of the guys that we play with now have played NISA and kind of gone through that path as well. But I ended up only playing 3 games because actually through a contact we met Costa Rican in California as well. And one of my dad's friends back home, they talked to the coach of Municipal Grecia, which is a team in the first division.
Municipal Grecia?
Municipal Grecia, yeah.
Municipal Grecia.
Grecia.
This is the Greek one?
Yeah, it's named after Greece.
I can't speak Spanish, man.
Yeah, it's funny because the teams that I've played with in Costa Rica, they're named after countries.
Yeah.
Urugauy and Grecia, which is Greece. But they're just clubs. So yeah, ended up played 3 games with LA Force, signed an amateur contract because I knew that this was a possibility. So ended up going to Costa Rica, and they're doing their preseason there. It's probably one of the toughest preseasons I've experienced in my life. I think the coach there just a very intense guy. One of the loudest coaches you'll hear on the sidelines, and not the most kind words, sometimes. Yeah. And also he had a fitness coach himself, and he was Argentinian, but he was kind of like from the old school a little bit. So he'd have us just like running sprints, like kind of on a timer, and just very, I think, kind of that old school mentality of fitness. But it actually helped me a lot. The only thing was I rolled my ankle, like I sprained my ankle pretty bad the second day that I got there. Ooh. So I was kind of dealing with that. Like the next day we were doing sprints, and I could barely get going, barely train. But as a trialist, you can't really say anything.
You can't take you can't take any days off.
Either you're like in or you're out. Yeah. So I braved through it, and actually it just got a little bit better. Wasn't playing my best football, I would say, but I was working very hard. And that's That's what the coach wanted.
Yeah.
So he wanted someone super intense, super like just be able to press all day, and that's what I was doing. But he actually, so we started the season, but just because of the paperwork, the international transfer clearance hadn't come through. They made a mistake at Grecia, the club, and some of the paperwork didn't come through. It took maybe, when it did come in, there was something wrong, so they had to resend it. So by the time I was cleared to play, it had been, like the season, it had already been like 3 weeks. And they, unfortunately, at that time, I think I would have gotten some options to play even as a starter with this coach. For that third game that we had in the league, he was about to put me in as a starter, like that first day before our game, or that last day, sorry, before our game. He used me as a starter, and then paperwork didn't come in. So, and then actually that game, we were on a little bit of a losing streak. It was only 3 games though. We lost the first 2, lost that third one, and he got sacked right after that. So it was kind of back to square one, or not even, like, just for me, I was probably gonna, the new coach, I didn't really know, like he didn't know me. He just kind of kept me around as a practice player, really. Like, he didn't really have plans for me at all. So I would just, sometimes I would be at training and I'd be like jogging outside. I'd be doing my own thing because I wasn't in his plans. And slowly, kind of, he just respected my work ethic and kind of that I wasn't making problems for him.
Yeah. So
kind of kept me on, but got a few options to play, but nothing really concrete. And then he gets sacked after 7 games. And the owner comes in. He's Mexican, the owner of this team. He came in, he took over, and he was like, at some point, actually, it wasn't right away, but at some point he said, okay, we're still losing. We got to change something. And I think it could have come sooner. It could have come sooner, looking back. And but at some point he said, okay, we got to change. Okay, Danny, we're going to put you in. Because I hadn't had a minute up until that point.
Can't get any worse.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm just the last resort.
Yeah.
But yeah, he puts me in, and I mean, I didn't start as a sub though, and then he put other guys in also that were like in my position that were just not getting looks at all. And he kind of changed the team around a little bit, and we started winning. Like we started doing a lot better. So come the end of the season, I was hoping, or I kind of had in the back of my head that maybe they would keep me on.
Yeah.
Kind of just since the team had, like, once we were incorporated fully, and it worked a little bit more. So the club president actually approaches me, and she told me that they would like to keep me on for the next year. This was before the tournament ended. And so I said, yeah, I'll definitely come back. But I just want to check with the coaches, see what their plans are. And I end up talking to them a week later, and unfortunately they weren't completely on the same page. They didn't want me because, well, they said they were bringing in a lot of like international players.
Yeah.
Just to kind of help raise the standard, and that I wasn't going to be in the plans for this upcoming year. In Costa Rica, it's a running tally of points from the first half of the season to the next half. So actually, it's still going right now. It's about to end, and it's not looking too good. I hope they pull through, but it's not looking like it's looking like they're probably like Grecia is probably gonna go down. It's tough, but yeah, it's the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you weren't in the plans and you pretty much said, okay, I need basically to get out.
Yeah.
And this is what, December?
I was on a 6-month contract, so it was no problem really getting out. So I just asked for my release and got it. This is December. This is kind of late November, early December. But by that point, I had already kind of worked on potential solutions for this year, just kind of looking at different options.
Which is good to do.
You always
need to have your...
You always do need to do that. And it's I mean, if as long as it doesn't distract you from what you're doing with the team right now, like if you're still fully bought in, but you still need to keep your options open.
Especially when you can feel that you're on the way out or like not in the plans for the next season or 2 seasons. You need to watch out for yourself and start talking. Same thing in college where you kind of like talking and be like, what's the situation over there? Okay.
And that doesn't mean you're a bad teammate and you're not like working hard for and like committed, but it's just, you got to look out for yourself and your future. And that was kind of what I was doing. And actually I reached out again to Bill Manning, the Toronto president. I reached out to him again. I told him, hey, this is my situation. I told him I was able to play in some pretty competitive games. I just didn't get a lot of playing time, to be fair. So selling yourself on those grounds is a little tough. I actually had reached out to a few USL teams and they weren't all that impressed with the playing time that I had. So they kind of right away, you could tell they weren't interested, right?
Yeah.
But Mr. Manning, he kind of, as I said, he's kind of special because, I mean, he didn't really have to do this. Like in his position, he's way up there, but he kind of admired my persistence and said, yeah, Danny, like, keep going. Like, this is great. You're almost there, right? You're kind of half a step away. So he told me, hey, here's Danny Dichio's contact. And that's how it happened. I emailed Coach Danny and he got back to me and said, hey, at this point, like, all we can really offer you is a trial. So if you're willing to come over here I think it was a week at that point. It was a week period. Then we'll have you. And then at that point I looked up videos of Detroit, and that's when it starts to dawn on you that it's like a different club and it could be very good if this works out.
Yeah. You don't want to get your hopes too high.
Yeah, exactly. Once again, you're kind of looking at it with like, but I also, and I've mentioned this before, but I was truly just appreciative of coming in, and I had been in trials before, so I kind of knew. You always know that like anything, it doesn't always happen, right? It doesn't always line up. So you, like you said, you gotta kind of take it as it comes and know that even if you're not selected, hopefully you're getting the most out of this experience and you're kind of using it to fuel you in the long run. So even if this didn't work out for me, I would probably gone back and played Nisa again. And I mean, I had been in conversations with them again at LA Force. So I would probably done that, maybe focus a little bit more heavily on finishing up the schoolwork and
thesis.
Yeah. And maybe getting a part-time job or something a little bit more solid in that regard.
But
still playing. Yeah. And then,
you ended up having a great trial here.
Yeah. It just goes.
Somebody said that you were the
week
first trialist that got signed from preseason.
Really?
I think everybody else had been signed before preseason had started.
Well, this year, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What are you referring to?
I don't know. I don't want to throw out a false fact, man. Somebody told me that
this season. I know I am like. But
I think it might be maybe in the USL Championship era. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
Somebody said that. I don't know.
Well, regardless, it's still like it's like
Big
I said
achievement.
it. Yeah, it's something that you know that you're up against it, that the odds are against you a little bit. That if this happens, it's got to be because everything lined up. It's not just because you performed well, but just because the coach had a vision of the squad, the finances also lined up. The roster size also lined
I
up.
talk about that a lot of my videos is like just being good enough is step 1 out of like 11 steps.
Yes.
And I went through it like all the stuff that you just mentioned, style of play, budget wise, even housing. Is it going to work that way? So everything does have to line up. Stars have to align for it to work.
Yeah. And being outside of the system, you get to know people that kind of deserve it just as much as you. And there's some really great players out there that just don't get the opportunity. Some have other situations and have a little bit of a more complicated lifestyle. At least in Costa Rica, I'm a little bit more familiar with that. But some of them do everything just right, and they kind of miss out on some big chances.
How have you been finding Detroit? I mean, they ended up offering you a contract, and that was pretty much where we started, where we did our 5-hour drive to Indy because you signed your contract.
It was pretty much like the next day.
Yeah. And then we drove down from Detroit to Indy. But how have you been? How's the season been going? This is your first USL Championship season. How have you been enjoying it?
I think I've been enjoying it a lot. I think this is very much a growth year for me. I mean, every year is, right? But obviously you're trying to soak in as much as you can from the other players, from the coach. I mean, Danny's a recognized player, kind of proved himself at the highest level. So you're always kind of hoping to pick up just little nuggets of info from him of how he was able to play at such a high level. But also like knowing or learning from some of the guys that have been in the league for a few years and how, like, what their habits are, and just trying to come in and give something a little bit different. As a player, you're always kind of, you don't want to offer the same thing that everyone does, right? You kind of, you're on the team to find or to offer whatever it is that you think that makes you a little special. And that's, I mean, it's kind of evolving and taking on that role. But I think it's easy. It's been easy for me, to be fair. I've come into a lot of locker rooms and not all of them are as easy to walk into as the one we have at DCFC. I just think that some guys maybe they realize that just because of the background, they've come from Nisa, they've seen the struggle like yourself. So I think they know that they can't count anyone out, right? That you always have to give guys a chance to prove themselves, and that's something that not a whole lot of clubs have. That benefit of the doubt. Okay, we're gonna give you a chance. We're gonna give you an opportunity, because that was me in your shoes maybe a few years ago.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%. And then because I mean, like, everybody, I mean, that's what's the crazy thing about the USL is, like, especially too with the teams that aren't, like, you know, that have the biggest budgets in the world, like Louisville or whoever. I just don't want to single out Louisville. There are other teams out there. But a lot of the teams that are especially grassroots, like Detroit or other teams like that, it's the stories of people grinding to get up there. We've all been the trialist. We've all been at home searching for opportunities, most of us at least. And it's
and I think
tough.
It just makes you a little bit more relatable. I think a lot of the role models that kids have are just kind of too far away from them in terms of, like, you see them on TV, you see
they've been in Barcelona's La Masia for the whole 20 years. It's different.
It's way different.
Never been cut before. You're like, well, that's not really how it goes.
So for like, it's less relatable. You can't really replicate that anywhere else other than if you're La Masia or something like that. But for us, it's probably as Costa Ricans, it's Keylor Navas, but he seems like he's just way
different.
up there.
He's different.
He's way up there. But yeah, as players in the USL, I think you kind of have a little bit more of that backstory of how do you kind of being a little bit intelligent in terms of finding your own ways to train, to kind of
get opportunities
and develop, even when everything's not kind of lining up just the way you want it.
Yeah.
Kind of making do with what you have. And I think as a player, once you do get all those opportunities, for example, like let's say the facilities we have at DCFC, I didn't have those. In Costa Rica, rarely do clubs have the facilities we have. So once you do have them, you kind of know, okay, I can really use this for my development. Compared to people that have always kind of been familiar with that, it gives you a different taste of that. And kind of I would think that you progress a little bit more rapidly than those players who've been just granted those situations their whole lives.
So you have a really amazing story, especially with a lot of persistence and through a lot of adversity, especially after you left Fordham. We'll wrap up the podcast with 3 big questions. What do you think has been the absolute lowest low of your career?
Oof, lowest low. I think, there's always, hopefully it's not coming, but but I think the lowest low would have to be that moment after my last Fordham game. Just that sinking feeling of knowing, okay, this was my last shot of this kind of path that I had traced myself for at least 5 or 6 years, kind of working towards that. And then knowing that in one game, it kind of just all crumbles down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. That's
and getting a red card, that's pretty bad.
That adds a little extra shittiness to the whole thing.
Right.
What has been the best moment, the highest high of your career?
Highest high would probably be that season that I had at Urugauy, just because I was so young and kind of I'd always been never kind of stood out in my age group. Kind of always was with academies, with some of the best teams in the country, but never did anything to stand out. And I was always kind of working outside, hoping that maybe one moment would come where kind of all that work shows a little bit on the pitch. But I think before that, I didn't really have it. And once that started clicking, it just everything seemed so easy. And rarely I've had that moment in my career where you're kind of trying things and they're kind of working out in your favor, and kind of you're shooting and you're finding the top corner and in training and games. And
you have a missed touch, ends up not making a player. You cross it goes into the goal. You're like, wow, things are flying.
But I think it just comes. Soccer is a little bit cyclical. Like you have some moments where nothing really comes off, and then just you work through those periods. You really put your head down, and then you kind of reap the rewards at some point. You never really know. Sometimes it's a long time before those sweet moments come. But for me, that was probably the sweetest time that I had, just because I was young and I was playing actually with players that had played in World Cups. Were kind of finishing out their career there. We're a very competitive team. We actually played in the final for the promotion and just narrowly lost. But in that team, actually, so one guy actually went to the past World Cup and scored. He scored against Japan.
Wow. And
Costa Rica won that game. They just sat back the whole game and then just one counter and he scored. Yeah. And he never shoots. It was crazy. But the other guy actually got like a super big like designated player contract at Cincinnati.
Wow.
It actually kind of, well, he isn't there anymore, but he still got to that point, and he's back in Costa Rica making having a decent career as well. But he also burst onto the scene after that year. So there were kind of a lot of exciting young players of that team, and I was one of them. And I kind of had never been in that position before.
That's awesome. And then the last question I have is, if you could go into a time machine now, you go back at any point in your career, what advice would you have for your younger self? You could go back to your lowest low moment after college, after the game, go back to a youth period. When would you go back and what would you say?
I think I would go back pretty far to when I was maybe at Saprissa when I was 11, 12 years old. I was always super technical as a player, but at that point I just hadn't hit my growth spurt. I was kind of struggling. We were playing on a full size field. I was kind of struggling to make an impact there, and I just felt like out of breath every time I would run, like try to cover as much distance as others. So I would have told myself to be a little bit more patient with myself, and also be willing to try to risk a lot more in terms of trying things that I wouldn't normally try. Just you look back and you want to be trying things at a young age. You don't want to wait till you're 25 or 26 to start risking or trying risky stuff in games. And you kind of look back and it's always lower stakes. Like the further back you go, it's more about, okay, it's develop as a player, but nothing right now really matters in the future other than your development. So I would have just told myself to be a little bit more patient, and also to be a bit more brave in trying things. Yeah.
I like that. Awesome. Well, Danny, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Sorry about the little camera mishap, but I'll make it look good. I'll make it look good.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man.
Yeah.
All the best this season.
Thank you.
Yep.
You too.